Hi, I'm Lenise Brothers, a registered nutritionist, women's health, hormone, and menstrual cycle coach, and the founder of Eat, Love, Move, a nutrition and well-being practice. This is the Period Story Podcast, where in each episode, I sit down with a guest to talk about their period story. We get behind some of the myths and misconceptions about periods and so much more. Now, on to today's guest. On today's episode, we have Elaine de la Cruz. Elaine is the co-founder of Project 23, a culture and performance consultancy passionate about people. After a successful career working in the media industry, she saw that there was room to do things better and was placed to do something about it. Started in 2018, Project 23 helps organizations to create an inclusive culture, in turn increasing employee happiness and ultimately resulting in better business performance. Their mission is to make the media industry a fairer, happier, and more productive workplace. Elaine is an ICF accredited executive coach, consultant, speaker, and trainer. She calls herself a positive disruptor, wanting to actuate change for good. Elaine's a proud single mom, a first-generation born Filipino Londoner, and a lover of music and eating. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lenise. Thank you for having me. That makes me sound pretty established, doesn't it? Makes me sound like I've done stuff.
You have. So let's get into the question that I start each episode with. So tell me the story of your first period.
So obviously, as soon as you invited me, I did think you got to rack your brains and start thinking about the detail of my first period. And I do wonder whether or not this relatively short story about my first period actually maybe is saying something about the way that I am with periods in general and maybe my kind of experience with it. So the detail that I have is pretty short and stubby, I would describe. I reckon, I don't even know how old I was, but I'm going to guess that I was probably about 12. So back then, so I'm 41, so back then that was pretty much in between primary school or middle school, as we called it even back then, and high school. So, because obviously the years dropped in London back then as well. So every summer, we and the family and our extended family here in London would get so excited about the prospect of going to Newbury, that in inverted commas Newbury. So the place called Newbury, but what we called Newbury was actually where my parents' friend, she was a housekeeper of a huge, like what I would describe as a mansion, but it's probably like a stately home. And in this mansion, they had a swimming pool, which was like the best thing ever. They had horses, they had tennis courts, they had a big old house. And the family that she was the housekeeper for would obviously allow her every now and then to invite her friends and family over. So for us, all my friends' parents, we didn't have any family here, but that was our family. So all the kids, every year we would go, and that would probably be our annual holiday, actually. And we would get so excited. And I remember I would count down the weeks to it. Then the driver's there, inevitably it's, are we there yet? Are we there yet? And one year I was absolutely devastated because this was the year that I got my first period. And all that meant to me, so my memory of it was sitting on the edge of the pool, paddling with my feet in, watching all the kids go nutso in the pool with all the dinghies and, splashing everyone. And, we're a big bunch of kids. I think we're probably about 13, 14 kids of various ages, my family, essentially. And I just remember thinking, shit. Well, I probably wasn't thinking shit. I was just kind of sulking. I wasn't in the pool because I wasn't allowed to. And all I remember thinking was that I guess blood would just leak out into the pool like a movie or something. And as I'm sitting there, and one of the aunts, in inverted commas, if you know, you know, then she was kind of like, Elaine, why are you getting in the pool? Come and get in the pool. And before I could say anything else, my mum just went, oh no, she has her period. She has her period for the first time. And then they started speaking in Tagalog, like the Filipino, like the native language between them. And I could just get the kind of bits and pieces of the fact that they were talking about me and the fact that it's my first period. Oh my God, that type of thing. Oh, really? Oh, she's so big now. Oh, and I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, this is cringe. And that was my memory. So, and I think it was missing out is like the feeling I have, and people talking about it like it was this thing that you weren't really supposed to talk about, and most definitely something that the women did. The women spoke about, not the girls, but the women. And I just remember my mum just blurting that out, and obviously I'm sure lots of mums do that, but mortificado is the word that I will use for it. But yeah, there's not really a before and an after that. I don't remember the experience. I don't remember, looking into my panties and seeing blood. I don't remember sanitary towels. I don't remember anything like that on that occasion. I just remember, I guess, that trauma piece, which I didn't really recognize as trauma at the time, but maybe it was. It was just absolute embarrassment. But yeah, that was my first period.
And so how did you learn about what it actually was? So you said you don't really remember the actual event, but did you have conversations beforehand with maybe cousins or your mom about what was going to happen?
Right. So this is the thing. So, I think knowing that I'm going to be talking about my first period, and knowing that I have two daughters who are 12 and 11, and talking about periods and understanding about periods is obviously completely relevant, and I need to know, and I want to know I've always wanted to know how to tell them. So coming here, I was thinking, okay, what was it? I mean, maybe my memory is maybe I have holes in my memory that I don't remember my mum telling me, or my older sister. My older sister is 5 years older than me. But genuinely, I don't have a single memory of my parents, my mum telling me, my older sister telling me. I have a vague memory of secondary school. So this is, I've probably already got my period, of how to use tampons. I remember that lesson because it was in one of the huts and it was freezing. But not a single memory. And I called my sister. I FaceTime my sister lives in Toronto, and I called her just a few days ago, just thinking, Jude, I need to double check with you. Did you ever tell me? Did you ever tell me about my period? She's like, I don't think so. I don't even remember who told me. And I think I was really curious to know, do most people come and tell you that they have a clear memory of who told them, and they have this maybe horrific story or this joyous story? But I did wonder to myself, what does it say that I think it never happened? I think the conversation in the household actually never happened. And maybe that was a cultural thing. Maybe it was just not what my mum thought was necessary, or maybe of an age, I don't know, maybe of our generation. I'm not quite sure. So I'd be really interested to hear what other people always say, and what you experience, the averages, if you like.
I mean, it's so different. I mean, some guests have talked about learning almost by osmosis, seeing kind of pads or tampons around the house, in the bathroom. Other people learned from school. From one of my guests, she talked about how she learned from Jackie magazine.
Wicked.
So I think culture definitely plays into a lot of the conversations. And I just wonder, from a cultural perspective, was there any conversation about sex? Or was that kind of something you learned by osmosis as well?
So like I said earlier, I'm 41. I still haven't had a conversation about sex like that. I think it's cultural to a degree, but I also think it is, like many things, it's down to, it is about who my parents are as people and the generation that they grew up in. And definitely, I don't know, maybe they came from the Philippines in the early 70s. They were completely able to speak English, but maybe, I don't know, maybe there is a language barrier thing for them as well, to talk about things that are that much more uncomfortable. I think they definitely come from an era, a culture, a family where we don't talk about certain things. We don't talk about periods. We don't talk about sex. We will talk a little bit about the things that you're not supposed to do. So, I had many one-way conversations about drugs, which were basically, you don't ever do drugs. So it was mentioned like that. But I think in general, they don't know, they don't have, I suppose, the vocabulary, the capabilities to be able to talk about things as a whole piece. So if we're talking about periods, I think that my mum and dad, who were they both worked in hospital, they both are hospital workers. My mum was, she worked for the NHS for ages. She was a haematology lab technician. My dad was a theatre technician, so he worked in operating theatres, both very, very practical and able to deal with the medical and physical things. But actually, obviously, when you're talking about periods, you're talking about, or sex, it's a huge part of it is also about emotion and how you deal with it, how you cope with it as a person. And those things, I don't think they have the vocabulary to be able to really express. And I think that's another reason why they kind of shied away or stepped away from it. And to be frank, or to be honest, I don't even know if they know that they stepped away from it. I think there is you and I, we grew up with Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Phil, and we've been given that vocabulary, right? Like, you're a fool if you can't, you're not deep if you don't have that kind of thing, which obviously I'm just joking, but they just they don't know how. But also I think there is 100% a part of it, which is we don't talk about periods because that's periods and they're private. They are shut away, as we all know that, that the society has made us do. They are things that we don't talk about. I don't even remember the question, if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, no, definitely it has. So having grown up with this, not really remembering how you learned about your period and how to kind of deal with it, what have you taken from that experience, and how are you now speaking to your daughters about what's has come or is about to come for them?
Yeah, a great question. I mean, I think with all the parenting challenges and aspects that you have, so we all want to be amazing parents, right? I know I always loved this phrase when the kids were first really young, which is that mums want. I mean, this is so generalizing here, so everyone can hate me for this, but it meant something to me at the time. Women, mums, they want to be the best mums ever. Dads, they just want to survive that shit. Right? That's what I always thought was just funny. And I definitely experienced that as a mum, that I want to be the best mum I could possibly be. So as I have got older, as I've got more informed, and that's still a growth line for me now. Obviously, I want to be. I hate to say it, but I say it. I want to be a better parent than my parents were to me, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I mean that in a more informed, educated way. And I take what they gave me as an essence, and I add on to it. So when it comes to what I've learned about my experiences with periods and how I can inform my girls, that's just one example of that, where I'm definitely aware. I can look back and I can see that, yeah, I didn't have not even the practical tools, because clearly I did, but it's the power that comes. I think that the empowerment that comes with being more informed about knowing about periods, the statement of the fact that it shouldn't be in the background. Why does it have to be in the background? So that's the bit I want to bolt on. Yes, my mum never told me about how I should do it, but I think the bit that I really only got later that I want to put on them earlier from the beginning is the feminist bit, which is the bit about, this is nothing to be ashamed of. This is everything to be proud of. And actually the privilege that's attached to having your period. Yes, I complain about it, but there's a huge privilege. So I suppose when I started to think about, okay, I've got to tell my kids this at some point. And I remember the time my sister was on holiday here, and her youngest, she has 3 girls, and her youngest is the same age as my oldest. And at the time, I think they're about 10. And she's come, and then they've gone back to Canada with FaceTime.